Corinne, after 17 years, we're eliminating your position, my boss said flatly. Clean out your desk by end of day. My name's Corinne Sterling, 54 years old, and until that Monday morning, Senior Systems Analyst at Synergy Innovations in Columbus, Ohio. For almost 2 decades, I'd been the backbone of the IT department. From the dial-up days to cloud migration, 3 CEOs had come and gone, while I stayed put, training every new hire, recovering every lost file, working through weekends and holidays without asking for a promotion or a pat on the back. So when Mr. Beckett called me into his office, with Miss Landry from HR already seated, I knew before he opened his mouth. The air had changed weeks ago. I understand completely, I said, nodding once. I walked out without another word. No anger, no pleading, just quiet acknowledgement. Back at my desk, I watched younger employees glance my way, then quickly look down at their screens. News travels fast. Most of them were coders I'd trained myself. Good kids, but they had no idea what was actually built into our systems or how the older architecture worked. None of them could navigate the custom software I'd written, or the admin credentials buried 3 layers deep in every system. I began packing my personal items methodically. Family photo, coffee mug my son made in high school, the small cactus that somehow survived 17 years under fluorescent lighting. A colleague from marketing stopped by, her face tight with concern. Corinne, I just heard. This is ridiculous. You practically built this place. I shrugged. Companies change direction. But without any warning, after everything you've done? Her voice was rising, drawing attention. It's fine, I said quietly. Really? It wasn't fine, but I wasn't going to make a scene. As I was leaving, Mr. Beckett stepped out of his office to watch me go. No goodbye, no handshake, just surveillance to make sure I actually left. What none of them had bothered to pay attention to over the years was that I had become the most critical person in the entire building. Not because I was exceptional, but because I was thorough. I documented everything, set up secure audit protocols years ago to track unauthorized access by request of the legal team during a past scandal. I also had copies. In my car, I sat for a moment, looking back at the 12-story building where I'd spent most of my adult life. The security badge I'd just surrendered had been renewed 16 times. I started the engine and drove home. They had no idea. Wednesday would be fun. I'd been with Synergy Innovations since it was just 2 floors in a business park. Started when my daughter Noemi was in kindergarten. Now she was finishing grad school. The company grew, and I grew with it. I turned down offers from competitors because loyalty mattered to me. My husband, Gabriel, used to joke that the servers were my second family. He wasn't entirely wrong. I knew every system, every workaround, every backdoor solution to problems the executives didn't even know existed. The infrastructure I'd built had survived 3 acquisitions and countless innovations that management embraced, then abandoned months later. Mr. Beckett became my boss 5 years ago. Young MBA type who called our department IT resources instead of people. He had ideas about streamlining, efficiency, digital transformation, buzzwords that usually meant doing more with less. At first, I tried to help him understand our systems, the complexity buried under years of growth and adaptation. We need to future-proof, he'd say in meetings, looking right past me. 6 months ago, he brought in a consultant named Julian Thorne. Expensive suit, firm handshake, Stanford degree displayed prominently on his LinkedIn profile. They'd huddle in conference rooms, speaking quietly whenever I walked by. 3 months ago, I noticed my access permissions being quietly modified. Nothing obvious, just small changes to administrative controls. I could have protested, but instead I watched, documented. You seem distracted lately, Gabriel said, one night as we sat on the porch. Is everything okay at work? I nodded, sipping my beer. Just changes, nothing I haven't seen before. But these changes felt different. I was being sidelined in meetings. Emails about system upgrades stopped, including me. Younger team members were assigned to projects I would normally handle. Then I found it. A company-wide memo about modernization initiatives that had never been shared with me. It outlined a complete restructuring of the IT department under new leadership, Julian Thorne. My position wasn't even on the organizational chart. That same day, I discovered something else. While running a routine security scan, one of those background tasks no one else bothered with anymore, I noticed unusual patterns in our financial software. Regular transfers to a vendor I didn't recognize, Viridian Group. A quick search showed it was registered just last year, with a business address that led to a UPS store. The authorized payments had started small, but were growing each month. I didn't say anything, just noted it, copied the records, and continued watching. Sometimes the quiet woman in the corner sees everything, precisely because everyone thinks she sees nothing. The morning after I was let go, I sat in my home office, staring at my personal laptop. No alarm had woken me. No commute waited. Just silence and the weight of what had happened. Gabriel brought me coffee, placing it beside me without a word. After 19 years of marriage, he knew when I needed space. "I'm going to the store," he said eventually. "Need anything?" I shook my head. After he left, I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a flash drive, one of several I kept secure. Company policies strictly prohibited removing data. But years ago, when the legal team needed an audit system for tracking potential insider threats, I'd been clear about needing off-site backups. They'd signed off on it, then promptly forgotten. I plugged it in and began reviewing the files. Internal emails, meeting minutes I shouldn't have had access to, financial records that normal employees would never see. There it was, a full history of payments to Viridian Group, nearly $1.8 million over 18 months. The approval chain led directly to our CFO, Mr. Ashworth. I dug deeper, cross-referencing dates and figures until the pattern emerged. The payments aligned perfectly with a series of software license renewals for systems we used company-wide. But the amounts were inflated, sometimes by 15%, sometimes by 20%. Small enough not to raise immediate flags, large enough to add up. I pulled up the business registration for Viridian Group. The listed owner was Simon Ashworth. A quick social media search confirmed what I suspected: Mr. Ashworth's brother-in-law. They were siphoning company funds through fake markup on legitimate expenses. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, something colder, more focused. For 17 years, I'd solved problems, fixed systems, protected data. I'd been the reliable one, the steady presence who never caused waves, and they discarded me like outdated hardware. My phone buzzed with a text from Lucas, a junior analyst I'd mentored over the past 2 years. "Sorry about yesterday. Total BS what they did. Thorne is already moving into your old office." I set the phone down without responding. The pieces all fit now. Mr. Beckett and the CFO needed me gone before anyone could connect the dots on their scheme. They probably thought the evidence would disappear with me, that I was just some aging tech girl who didn't understand modern finance. I opened my email and began drafting a message to the board of directors. Then I stopped, a finger hovering over the send button. Too direct, too easy to dismiss as the bitter accusations of a fired employee. I needed leverage, precision, a way to expose the fraud that couldn't be ignored or covered up. I deleted the draft and started making plans. Tomorrow was Wednesday, board meeting day. Quarterly financials would be presented. Bonuses would be approved. Perfect timing. I closed the laptop and walked to the living room window, looking out at the neighborhood where we'd raised our kids and built our life. For the first time since yesterday, I smiled. Wednesday morning, I sat in my car across the street from Synergy Innovations headquarters, watching employees stream through the revolving doors. In the passenger seat was my laptop, logged into an email account I'd created years ago for security testing, one that appeared to come from an internal company domain but wasn't tracked in the main directory. At exactly 9:15 a.m., I sent my first move, an email to Mr. Beckett with the subject line, "Financial Irregularities, Urgent Review Needed," and a basic summary of what I'd found regarding the Viridian payments. I included just enough detail to be credible, but kept the brother-in-law connection out of it. If Mr. Beckett was involved, he'd panic. If he wasn't, he'd investigate. Either way, I'd learn something. By 9:45, my phone rang, Mr. Beckett's number. I let it go to voicemail. His message was curt. "Corinne, we need to discuss your email immediately. Call me back." I didn't. Instead, I drove to a coffee shop, set up my laptop, and waited. At 10:30, another email appeared. This one from Ms. Landry in HR. "Ms. Sterling, we've received concerning communication from you that potentially violates your separation agreement. Please cease all contact with Synergy Innovations employees and remember your confidentiality obligations. Any further communications may result in legal action. So, that's how they were playing it. Threaten, dismiss, isolate. I hadn't signed any separation agreement. At noon, I drove to my bank and accessed my safe deposit box. Inside was another backup, older, but with critical information I hadn't included on my regular drives. Among the files were original security protocols I designed, including documentation of who had access to what systems and when changes were made. According to these records, Mr. Ashworth had personally requested expanded access to the financial approval systems 18 months ago, right when the Viridian payments began. Back home, I found 3 more missed calls: Mr. Beckett, Ms. Landry, and now Julian Thorne. I hadn't expected him to get involved so quickly. Interesting. I checked my personal email to find a message from Lucas marked urgent. "Corinne, they're saying you sent some crazy email about financial fraud. Thorne called an emergency meeting. Everyone's talking. They're pulling your access to everything, even historical stuff. We need to do our jobs. What's going on?" Poor kid, caught in the crossfire. I sent a brief reply. "Don't get involved, Lucas. Just watch." At 3 p.m., my home phone rang, a number I hadn't used for business in years. I picked up but said nothing. "Corinne, it's Mr. Ashworth." His voice was steady, controlled. "We should talk about your concerns. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Is that what you call it?" I asked. "Look, transition periods are always difficult. If you have questions about company finances, there are proper channels, like the board." I interrupted. "The board doesn't need to be bothered with operational details. Why don't we meet tomorrow? Just you and me. We can clear this up." "Sorry, I'm busy tomorrow," I said. "Besides, I think the board might actually be very interested in Viridian Group and your brother-in-law." The sharp intake of breath told me everything. "You're making a serious mistake," he said finally. "We can make this right. Generous severance, references, whatever you need." "Goodbye, Ashworth," I said, and hung up. Within 10 minutes, Ms. Landry emailed again. Suddenly, my severance package had doubled with an attached agreement requiring my complete confidentiality regarding all company matters. They were scrambling now, but they still thought they were dealing with a simple extortion attempt. They had no idea what was coming. Thursday morning brought clarity and confirmation. I'd spent the night combing through years of data, connecting dots I'd previously overlooked. The Viridian scheme wasn't Mr. Ashworth's first creative accounting project. 3 years ago, shortly after he became CFO, another pattern emerged. Consulting fees to a firm called Lexington Partners, different name, same game. Inflated invoices for services partially or never rendered. I traced the registration for Lexington. This one lent to Caroline Ashworth, Mr. Ashworth's wife. The woman was apparently CEO of a company that had no website, no employees, and a virtual office address. But the bigger revelation came when I dug into email archives. Mr. Beckett hadn't just been aware of these arrangements, he'd helped facilitate them. In exchange, his department received budget increases while others faced cuts. He'd been brought in specifically because the previous director had started asking questions about IT expenditures. Even Julian Thorne was connected. His consulting firm had been hired through an unusual process that bypassed normal procurement channels. His real role wasn't modernizing IT. It was eliminating the one person who might notice the financial patterns: me. The scheme was elegant in its simplicity. Create legitimate-seeming vendors, approve inflated payments, and split the difference. Since actual services were being provided just at marked-up rates, auditors scanning for completely fraudulent charges would miss it. Over 3 years, they diverted nearly $4.3 million. I gathered everything into a comprehensive report. Spreadsheets showing the pattern of increases, business registrations linking the companies to Mr. Ashworth's family, email exchanges showing Mr. Beckett's knowledge and participation. Then I did something they wouldn't expect. I contacted Miss Lindstrom, a board member I'd worked with years ago during a security implementation. She was semi-retired now, but still attended quarterly meetings. "Corinne Sterling," she said, answering on the second ring. "Long time. Heard you left Synergy." "Not by choice," I replied. "Miss Lindstrom, I need 15 minutes of your time. It's important." Silence then. This about why Ashworth and Beckett have been huddled together looking stressed? "Board meeting was tense yesterday." "Probably," she chuckled. Always figured you knew where the bodies were buried. Where can we meet? An hour later, we sat in a park 3 miles from headquarters. I handed her a sealed envelope containing a printed summary and a flash drive. That's everything, I said. Dates, amounts, connections. I'm not looking for my job back. I'm not looking for money. I just want the right people to know. Miss Lindstrom studied me. Why come to me? Because you actually read audit reports. I watched you in meetings. You ask questions. She nodded slowly. There's an emergency board session tomorrow. Finance committee review. Convenient timing, Corinne, she said, pocketing the envelope. If this checks out, there will be serious consequences. I'm counting on it. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Gabriel. Someone named Julian Thorne came by the house looking for you. Said it was urgent. I told him you were out. They were getting desperate. Good. That afternoon, I received job offers from 2 competing firms, both for positions well above my previous role, both offering substantial signing bonuses. Word had gotten around about my sudden availability. I ignored them for now. This wasn't about finding another job. It was about finishing what they had started. That night, using credentials that should have been revoked but weren't, sloppy IT transition. Thorne, I accessed the company's email server one last time and scheduled a message to be delivered to every board member at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Before you approve Q2 bonuses, read this. Attached was my full report. Friday morning dawned clear and bright. I sat on my porch with coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. No alarm clock, no commute, just waiting. At precisely 8 a.m., my scheduled email delivered its payload to the board members. By 8:17, my phone began to ring. Numbers I didn't recognize, likely board members' assistants scrambling to reach me. I let them all go to voicemail. At 9 a.m., the emergency finance committee meeting would begin. Miss Lindstrom would be there with my documentation in hand, watching reactions as my email was discovered and discussed. At 9:32, Lucas texted, "Police are here. Ashworth and Beckett being questioned in conference rooms, Thorne looking sick." What did you do? I didn't respond. The wheels were turning exactly as I'd anticipated. By 10 a.m., Synergy Innovations General Counsel called. Unlike the others, I answered this one. Miss Sterling, this is Cynthia Grace from Legal. We need you to come in immediately to discuss information you've provided to the board. I'm available by phone, I replied. This really requires an in-person discussion. No, it doesn't, I interrupted calmly. Everything I know is in that report. Everything I have is already backed up in multiple secure locations. If anything happens to me or my family, additional copies go to the SEC, IRS, and 3 news outlets. Silence. Miss Sterling, she finally said, her voice carefully measured. The board is taking this extremely seriously. They've already placed several executives on administrative leave pending investigation. They would appreciate your cooperation. I've cooperated fully by providing complete documentation. My part is done. After she hung up, I drove to a diner 20 miles outside Columbus, no sense being easily found today. Over lunch, news began breaking on local business sites. Synergy Innovations executives under investigation for financial irregularities. No names yet, but that would come. At 2 p.m., Miss Lindstrom called. It's a bloodbath, she said without preamble. Ashworth confessed once we confronted him with your evidence, trying to cut a deal, blaming Beckett for pressuring him. Beckett's denying everything, and Thorne claims he was just a consultant who had no knowledge of financial matters. Board isn't buying it. We've suspended all 3 pending further investigation. The money, forensic accountants are coming in Monday. Early estimates suggest at least $4.5 million diverted over 3 years, maybe more. I nodded to myself. I'd been close. The board wants to talk to you, Miss Lindstrom continued, about coming back, not just to your old position. They're creating a new chief security officer role, reporting directly to the board. I'd anticipated this possibility, but still found myself surprised. I'll think about it, I said. That evening, I told Gabriel everything. He listened without interrupting, then asked, "What do you want to do?" Good question. The revenge part was complete. The people who'd pushed me out were themselves being pushed out, likely facing criminal charges. Justice had been served, cold and precise. But returning to Synergy meant walking back into the place that had discarded me after 17 years of service. Could I do that? Did I want to? I need time to decide, I said finally. Later that night, I opened my laptop one last time and posted a single message to my otherwise dormant LinkedIn profile. Never burn bridges, just let them collapse under the weight of their own greed. Within minutes, former colleagues began reaching out. Word was spreading. The quiet systems girl had brought down 3 executives without raising her voice. By Monday, everyone would know exactly who they'd underestimated. Monday morning, I walked into Synergy Innovations headquarters wearing a suit I hadn't needed in years. The security guard did a double take, then quickly printed me a visitor badge. "Welcome back, Miss Sterling," he said with newfound respect. The elevator ride to the executive floor was quiet. I'd never had reason to visit this level before. Now I was expected in the boardroom. 10 board members sat around a polished table. Miss Lindstrom nodded slightly as I entered. The interim CEO. Previously, the COO looked uncomfortable. "Miss Sterling," she began, "thank you for coming. The situation you've brought to light is unprecedented." I remained silent. "The full extent of the fraud appears worse than initially reported," she continued. "The forensic team has identified nearly $5.2 million in diverted funds. Criminal charges are being prepared." Still, I waited. Miss Lindstrom cleared her throat. "Corinne, the board has unanimously voted to create a new executive position, Chief Information Security Officer, with full executive privileges, reporting structure directly to the board. We'd like to offer you the role." I set my folder on the table. "Inside, you'll find my conditions," I said. "Non-negotiable." The CEO opened it, scanning quickly. Her eyebrows rose. "Full audit authority across all departments. Independent budget. Veto power on financial technology decisions." I nodded once. "This is unusual," she said. "So was embezzling $5.2 million, I replied. "That happened because no one was watching. Now someone will be." The room fell silent. "You have until noon," I said, standing. "I have other offers." As I turned to leave, Miss Lindstrom asked, "Did you plan this all along, Corinne?" I paused at the door. I didn't plan to be fired after 17 years. Everything after that was just me doing what I've always done, identifying system vulnerabilities and implementing appropriate security measures. At 11:47, they called. They'd accepted every condition. 6 months later, I sat in my new corner office reviewing security protocols for the upcoming quarter. The view overlooked the Columbus skyline, a daily reminder of how much had changed. Mr. Ashworth had pleaded guilty to multiple fraud charges. In exchange for cooperation, he'd receive a reduced sentence, still significant. Mr. Beckett was fighting the charges, insisting he was unaware of the scheme, despite the evidence. Julian Thorne had fled to Brazil, but was being extradited. The money had been recovered, most of it anyway. Enough that the company avoided serious financial damage. My former team now reported to me. Though I'd promoted Lucas to run day-to-day operations, the kid had potential. Just needed someone to see it. A knock at my door drew my attention. Gabriel stood there, smiling. "Ready for lunch?" he asked. I nodded, grabbing my jacket. As we walked through the IT department, conversations quieted briefly. Not from fear, but respect. These people knew what had happened. They knew I could have destroyed the company instead of saving it. In the elevator, Gabriel squeezed my hand. "Happy?" I considered the question. The anger that had driven me those first few days after being fired had faded. What remained wasn't exactly happiness, more like satisfaction, completion. "I'm good," I said. Outside, the October sun warmed our faces as we walked to a nearby restaurant. My phone buzzed with a message from Ms. Lindstrom. "Board approved your security budget increase. Unanimous vote." I smiled slightly. No arguments, no questions, just trust. Gabriel noticed my expression. "What is it?" "Nothing," I said, sliding the phone back into my pocket. "Just thinking about bridges. Some collapse under their own weight. Others, once repaired."
Thank you, and let me know in comments how you like the story. Which part was the most interesting and what kind of revenge stories you like. Subscribe for weekly interesting revenge stories.